And we are live. So welcome to the study group week 2 of the Road to Google Cloud Certification. This is the Associate Cloud Engineer curriculum. We hope that your week was very fruitful, that you managed to consume the content and enjoy it, and that you now have a little more sparks to jumpstart your knowledge of the cloud. Today, our main speaker is going to be Goran. This session is going to be a little bit more hands-on. We are going to get a little bit more quick and dirty than in the previous one. After the sample questions that we have to showcase today, we will have a chance to answer your questions. Some of them may be from the Slack channel that we collected during the week. Some others may be the ones that you type to us right now. So other than me, which I'm Saverio Terracciano from GDG Cloud London, you may see Amanda somewhere in the chat. Then we also have, as said, Goran Minov from GDG London. Then we have David Renton from GDG Athlone and Galway. Yeah, so the other side of the UK. We have Lorenzo and Alessandro and Rossano from GDG Cloud London. And we have CD Tiwari from GDG Cloud Cambridge, correct? Am I correct? I see him stuck. Okay, great. So
yes, GDG Cloud Cambridge.
Cambridge, great. I'm always waiting bullets because I so many nice chapters that I get them mixed up. Anyway, welcome from all of us to all of you that may join us today from all the parts of the world. Some of us, like in the UK, it's afternoon after a long day of work, or some others, like I guess in India, it's night. So thank you for your effort. And with this, I guess that I will leave the stage to Goran.
Thanks, Saveria. Hi, everyone from London. So as Saveria mentioned, I am from GDG London. It's very actually rare to say, so hello from the sunny London today. So as Saveria mentioned, this is our week 2 of the study group. So I hope that everyone settled in with week 1, managed to go through some context on plural sites, join our Slack channel as well, where we are we'll be able to answer any questions and help out with anything. So again, my introduction. So what we were discussing today is that where are we on our journey? As mentioned, it's week 2. A little bit of the exam guide review for the Associate Cloud Engineer. We will do a little demo, sort of like a hands-on, just to showcase the, I would say, the most important things as a beginning of the journey. Then we will have the little sample question review, and also at the end a little Q&A and the preview actions for next week. We won't be bothering you a lot with slides today. So to note where are we on our journey. So we are at week 2. By now you should have been completed, or if you have not, there is still time for you as well to complete the Google Cloud Fundamentals, the core infrastructure on plural side. And we are, or at least the journey is expecting from your side to complete this week the essential Google Cloud infrastructure, the foundation on plural sites. And as well, it is a good idea to review the exam guide, and also as all of you are today joining the study group. So with the details of the exam guide review, in week 2 study group, the most important asset, so to say, is setting up a cloud solution environment. So this includes setting up a cloud projects and accounts, managing billing configuration, and also installing, configuring the command line interface. Even though this is here, so to say, installing, configuring the command line interface, at least on Google Cloud Console, is very, very easy. So to say, it's just a click of a button over there, and because we all have access to that, and it's also the most important thing is free of charge. Our next thing is planning and configuring a cloud solution. So it's a good idea of using the pricing calculator, as well as using compute resources, data storage, and also any network resources. So before we go on the next step for our sample question review, I will try and I'm just going to share my tab where I have created a little project just before we started. I have called it RGCC for Road to Google Cloud Certification Demo. And as you can see, this project there is nothing on there, the resources. And when starting in Road to Google Cloud, this one, what is it called, is called the console. So the actual website is console.cloud.google.com, and this is the graphical user interface when it comes to the Google Cloud Platform. There is a couple of, as you probably are aware, there's a couple of different, so to say, resources or interfaces that you can use when interacting with the Google Cloud Platform. One of them is the console, which is the graphical user interpretation, and it's also called the dashboard. The other one is G-Cloud console, or the terminal side of the thing. And the third one is also you can be using the Google Cloud APIs for interfacing with that. So couple of things to notice. So when we're accessing the Google Cloud Console, we could see on the top we have our project. So clicking there, it will show us all, for example, our recent projects, and then we have our all projects over here. So we can easily switch between projects by clicking on the projects that we would like to. And also on the top left, we have the navigation menu. So while opening the navigation, this at the beginning probably might differ. It will actually differ from each and everyone, just because I have been using these or I am using them often. So I have pinned them on the top, although I can show you another thing as well when trying to access the graphical user interface. So over there on the bottom, we will have all the products that we would need and that we can actually use when it comes to the Google Cloud Platform. But whenever I would need to access any of those products, I rarely integrate with the menu on the site, just because, as you can see, there are loads and loads and loads of different products that we can use. So whatever I do is I always type at the top. So if you would like, for example, to access Kubernetes, I would just type Kubernetes and I can straight away be Kubernetes engine or even a cluster, or I can go by the click straight over there. Or let's say if you would like to do a function, straight away we can see it on the top. So it's getting ready, yeah, just because I have never opened it over here. So by going back to the dashboard, we can go through the home, back to the dashboard, or we can just click up here on the Google Cloud Platform. So we mentioned about having the G-Cloud console. So on the top, we will see the Cloud Shell, so-called. So by clicking on a button, we will activate a Cloud Shell. And Cloud Shell, the good thing is that it is a VM that comes with all the pre-installed G-Cloud packages that we would need to use in order to communicate with the Google Cloud Platform. So such as G-Cloud, GSUtil, and also it comes with many more tools pre-installed for us, and also they're like up to date. So one of the best things here is that this one is very, very good to be used, just because if you want to get more familiar, if you're like more familiar with this side of things, you can get things done quite fast. Just because there was a question that came up on the Slack channel where someone mentioned about how, when it comes to, for example, any of the Cloud Hero challenges, how anyone is able, for example, to complete that fast. Well, when it comes to all this, Cloud Shell is your friend. So if you would have a couple of commands, to be honest, entered one after another, they can all be executed at the same time, which is great to see here. So even though they will follow after another, maybe not at the same time. So, but another thing to have a look at the Cloud Shell is that this is so-called it's probably a good idea to say a preemptible VM, because if you would like to host files for your website, this is not the place. Just because it will be at some point paused or destroyed, even though your files will be retained over there, you will not be able to access it. So you will be able to access the files while you are here. So as I mentioned before, it comes with all the tools installed. So if you like to go and see, for example, gcloud already comes. So we can see we're currently on a version 3.3.6. We have mentioned gsutil, which is the Google Storage utility. This one as well is installed, which is version 4.61 at the same time. But also, the great thing is that comes also with Git, comes installed with Maven. I think as well also comes with Java installed. It's great. So everything that we would need. So this is our Debian, Linux Debian developer machine, which we do not need to do anything in order to install any of those. Of course, all of this by going to cloudgoogle.com and searching for gcloud, all of this documentation is available for how to install locally on your PC or a laptop. But why not to take the advantage of it, and while we have it for free? So it's actually quite good, and I highly recommend it for using. A couple of things that are from the week 1. There was over there about Compute Engine. So Compute Engine is the virtual machine, so to say. So whenever you would like to host any virtual machines for, let's say, you would like to host a website on your, so to say, the classic way, you can host it on your VM, just because there's a couple of other options out there. For example, you can host it on App Engine, which will be the completely managed. But let's go one thing at a time. So I'm just gonna wait a couple of seconds for this to load, and I will show a little the graphical user interface of the Compute Engine on our console. So a good thing to remember here is that console is actually the graphical user interface when it comes to the Google Cloud Platform. Although for some other products, so to say, it is also, a console is something more related to terminal way, like the Cloud Shell over here. But over here, we're talking about, so that takes a little for all of them too. While that is, let's show another thing, which is storage. So cloud storage is the so to say, buckets where it's a blob storage where we'll be able to host any files that we would like. We will be able to integrate with those files in a different way, and it is there's a couple of things that to note here where we would like to create bucket. So I remember I have one bucket called phishing email function framework. Sorry, just because it's something that I personally working on the side. So if I would like to create that bucket right now, that bucket name is taken. But why is that? Just because I have created somewhere else, I won't be able to take it. So buckets or the Google Cloud Storage, it's hosted in a single namespace. So the name of that bucket must be globally unique within all the projects on the Google Cloud Platform. Another way to think about this is that whenever you create a project, you have the project ID. So for example, for this one is RGCC-demo. So that is also must be uniquely for all the other projects when it comes to the Google Cloud Platform. So the Google Cloud Storage or the bucket and the project, you need to think about, it's a good way to correlate between them. But if I do, let's say, one, that it's fine, just because no one else has created. So if someone else, for example, on this code is faster than me and creates that, at some point, I will get an error just because I won't be able to create it. There's also a couple of words that are not allowed. You can't start anything with Google. You also can't start anything with G00, anything like that, just because those are all aliases of Google, and that Google is actually reserved name that cannot be used. That is something I wanted to discuss about the buckets. Of course, when you create a bucket, there's a couple of things. You can choose what you would like, the multi-region, tool region, and region. Then you will be able to choose if you would like it to be, for example, if you only store data over there for archive purposes, there is a different details of that, but we're going into too many details. The most important thing to remember here is that your name for this bucket, as well as the project ID, must be unique across the Google Cloud Platform, as this is a single namespace. So going back to the compute engine, as I can see over here, that one already finished. And I'm just going to minimize here. So a little graphical user interface where we'll be able to create instance. So going over here, the name of this instance, it can be any that we would like. I would say I have this instance created somewhere else. That's completely fine. This doesn't need to be unique across all the projects. So if you would like to create that, let's say US East one is, sorry, US Central one is fine, just because that is as a default. So whenever you're in doubt, I would say use US Central 1A, and then you would just do general machine configuration and anything like that. So if you would see here on the bottom, we have mentioned at the beginning that you can integrate with the console, but you will also integrate with the APIs with a REST command, but also as a command line. So the great thing here is that when you run, it gives you the command that you'll be able to run in order to create that virtual machine in the Cloud Shell. So I know probably most of you are thinking like, how I can remember all these commands. Well, you actually do not need to remember all of this. So let's say if I would about to remember up till here, that should be fine with me, because I have asking G-Cloud, so you can ignore the beta at this point. So G-Cloud compute, so we have the project we would like. We create a one instance. So the instance name is BEF1, what the zone we specify, and what is the machine type. We can then add the default, like a subnet, or what we would like for the network, or many other things like the scopes and stuff like that, but we don't need to. And if you would like, if you go to cloud.google.com, search for G-Cloud compute command, you'll be able over there to see all the flags and all the that you can pass to the actual command. So that is what I wanted to discuss for these two. And then, of course, by going to billing, you will be able to associate in order to, because some of them, like any of the big data, so to say, products or the tools, like let's say Dataproc requires for the billing to be enabled in order for you to run, although the cost of that is very, very minimum, and it's built, I think last time I remember, within seconds. So you would just get billed for whatever you have been used. But also, as you remember, there is a trial on Google Cloud Platform, which is I think around $300 for 3 months, and that is actually will get you very, very far. So that's a little brief overview of the dashboard or the console of the Google Cloud Platform. Going back to our presentation, we have a couple of sample questions that we would like to review this week. So first question is regards to instance templates, right? So instance templates are used to create a group of identical VMs. So what these instance templates include? So we have A, what is like machine type, boot disk image or container image, zone and labels. Option B, cloud storage bucket. C, a load balancer, or D, app engine configuration file. So there's a couple of things we are always looking when we are presented with a question. So we are looking for keywords. So looking at it here, we have the first keyword is that a group of identical VMs. So VM or the virtual machine can be a keyword here. So even though we're looking for what instance templates are used to create a group of identical VMs. So do we need a cloud storage bucket definitions in that instance templates to create a VM? Actually, we do not need, just because cloud storage bucket is something different, and also we can always create a virtual machine, but not necessarily is directly related with cloud storage. Just because cloud storage is something else, great. So then we have a load balancer. Load balancer, it is not something that we would include as well over there, and neither is app engine. So the correct answer here would be the first one. We will, because whenever we create a VM, we would need the name for that VM. We would need a machine type, and for example, N1 standard 1, and those ones are, it depends on how many vCPU we would like, or how much RAM we would need. We would need the disk size, always what it will be the image in, for example, if you would like to have a Debian in our case, and zone and labels. Labels is used if you would like to create any firewall rules or anything like that, where we would like to open any ports from, for example, RDP of port of 3389, forwarding to those VMs that have only that label. It's very good to, instead of creating a firewall rule for each VMs, we can just do a label and then it can be done. The next one that we have over here is the command line command. So to create a cloud storage bucket. So this is actually quite good sample question. That's why we wanted to include it this week, just because there is a couple of things that's here to note. So we're looking for the command line command, and this is to create a cloud storage bucket, right? So cloud storage bucket, we have mentioned, in order to integrate on the Cloud Shell, we would need to use a GSUtil, which stands for Google Storage Utility. But which one we would need to create it? So we have a couple of options. Is it gcloud MB, GSUtil MB, or gcloud MK bucket and GSUtil MK bucket? So going forward, when we would like to create any resources somewhere, usually we use a gcloud command. So for example, if you would like to create a new compute engine instance, like a VM, maybe it's even better if I try to share just briefly the dashboard. So going back to Computer Engine, just gonna wait to load. Thank you. So we have mentioned at the bottom, we would need a gcloud command. Okay, great. When we go to Kubernetes engine and we would like to create a cluster over here, we usually use, just not gonna wait for that, we use gcloud command as well to create a Kubernetes cluster. But then, as you're probably aware by now, we have a kubectl as a command line command or command line tool that we will be able to use to integrate with that cluster. But in order to talk with that cluster, we would need first to create it, and we use the gcloud command. So the first point here to look is that there is not really a keywords in the question. However, there is a couple of things, and this is easy actually to remember, so to say, when going through the documentation. So when it comes to create a Google Cloud Storage bucket, we always use a gsutil command line command. So this is the difference between, let's say, Computer Engine and Kubernetes. Mostly the difference like between Kubernetes as well. And this question was before on the in the exam review, so to say, what is like you can, if you go to cloud.google.com, you will find it there. But over here, so we use the gsutil, but which one it is? Is it MB or MK bucket? So MK bucket looks like it stands for a make bucket, which is might be, but also MB. So MB is also might stand for make bucket. So both of them. But looking at it, I know at the first time, if you like have ever been familiar, it will look like it might be MK bucket, just because is it MB, a really short command that probably will not be able to remember it, but actually that's the correct command. So in order to create a cloud storage bucket, the correct command is gsutil MB, and then you can continue to integrate with that command. Like if you like to copy, move files, or anything like that, you will still need to use the gsutil command line command. A last one that we have over here from the questions is that it's a little longer. So your company has an object management policy that requires that objects stored in cloud storage be migrated from regional storage to nearline storage 90 days after the object is created. So as you are aware, we have multi-regional, regional, we have a nearline, and we have also cold line storage, which is like cold line is the only purpose that I would say I would think about cold line is that I have finance files, and I think it was by law, last time I said by law in the UK, you would need to have those finance files somewhere stored for the last 7 years, just in case you get an audit. I would think so. That's the only use case I would think. So I would say you don't, everything from year 2 to year 7, you do not use it at all. So you will only use it whenever someone is like really is going to ask you to download those files. That's like, for example, cold line. So what is the most efficient way to do this? We have 4 options here. Just gonna read out each option. I'll try to resonate with them. So first one we have is a create a cloud function to copy objects from regional storage to nearline storage. This is possible to create a cloud function to copy, but don't you think that this would actually require an extra step from you, an extra effort from you in order to be set up and for all the files to be copied? I would think personally that most likely Google has already thought about this. So there must be anything that can be done for these things instead of creating a bucket, let's say a regional bucket, and then we would like to move it, create another nearline bucket, and then after 90 days, check the file, copy it over to the nearline, delete it on the original. So this is something that's I would say is not is something actually that Google, I'm 100% sure they already thought about it. So I don't see this as an answer. Then we have option B, which is set the migrate object after property on the stored object to 90 days. So I have highlighted the migrate object after, which is something that is asked here that, okay, is this really, so to say, property that can be actually, that is available for us to choose? Looking at the documentation, I looked at it. This is not something that we are actually able to choose. So it does not exist. So migrate object after, it does not exist as an object when we actually in cloud storage. C, option C, we have copy the object to persistent storage attached to a VM and then copy the object to a bucket created on nearline storage. Way too complicated. And just a simple of this is like, well, I do not want to be overcomplicating. I just wanted something new. So that gives us option D, which is create a lifecycle management configuration policy specifying an age of 90 days and set storage class as nearline. Yeah. So this is what we're looking for as an answer, and this is something that is also available. So when we create a cloud storage bucket, and also later on, I believe we can actually add this one as well, is that we can create a lifecycle management configuration policy, and then we can set the storage class as nearline and also the age of 90 days. So this is something that is available and is actually the correct answer to this question. So overall, that was my little presentation and demo for today. We have the next bit, which is Q&A. I haven't seen the chat or if anyone has any questions. Saverio?
Thank you, Goran. Thank you. It was very clear, and it's nice actually to see these things coming together, visual, like not just like in a slide, but seeing the real product. I guess that the chat, the attendees would agree with us that it gives that little more hands-on experience that and is oftentimes the step that most people are the most scared with, because as you were saying in your presentation, wow, there are a lot of products. Where do I start? And especially when you see billing next to that, you are afraid of doing something wrong and starting to pay for your mistake with your own money, which is not nice. Anyhow, we've collected the questions that were asked in the meantime. And well, one thing before we get into them is there is a few general points that I'd like to outline. One is many were asking about what is the correct product or the correct configuration to do this project or task or idea. One of the most important steps for anything that you have in mind is to understand the requirements of your project. You need to understand clearly what you're going to build. You have to understand the parameters that you're going to work with, which is what availability this solution has to have. How many people are going to interact, or processes are going to interact with it? What is the load that my application will need to be able to carry? Because not two applications are the same. Even if you do, let's imagine that you want to do note-taking app, okay? One thing is, I'm going to make a note-taking app for myself. Great, that's going to be able to run in a super small machine with very little availability requirement, because if it doesn't work sometimes for myself, I may not care as much. One other thing is that you're making an enterprise-grade note-taking application that you want to sell to your customers, potentially having millions of connections all around the world. You can see that this is going to be, despite being the same, two very different applications. So the first thing you will have to do is understand your requirements, because from your requirements, the products that you're going to be using will be very different. Another thing that we have to understand is that even once you have understood your requirements, you have to consider that there are oftentimes trade-offs that you can make. So you can use multiple products to achieve the same result, but each one of them will give you something more, something less. Sometimes you trade efficiency for price, or sometimes you give up customization for simplicity and quickness to develop. You could pretty much most of the things that you can do it with a VM that, as Goran was showing, Compute Engine, you do it. Pretty much you use it as any old server in which you have your workload running. And that's oftentimes also the basic for any direct migration lift and shift from a very old system to the cloud. Probably that's the first step you can make. But then again, if you want, you may use you could containerize your load and run it in GKE, in Cloud Run, or even a cloud function. So there is no absolutely correct answer. You have to often in this question choose the question that better fit your load and requirements. And the requirements may be a requirement specific to your application and a requirement specific to your process. Because if I recall correctly, some of the questions were not specifying only the kind of application you were supposed to run or write, but also the way your team wanted to go about implementing that. Specifying these, then I guess we can start getting into the questions. So if someone of our team wants to pick any question.
I've been compiling them. You want me to start reading them in order and
yeah. So Lorenzo can start, and anyone else that has the link that Lorenzo used to compile can absolutely take any question or add, build on top it, or be like, and one more thing, great in the chat that you were helping each other, which is something at the base of what we're trying to do, because we're not that different from you. We're not on another level. Wow, we can make mistakes. We were just you maybe 1 year ago. So if you're helping your fellow students, that's great. I guess that we are getting to a really good point, because that's part of what we want to promote, which is cooperation and sharing of knowledge.
Nice. So I see we have about 10 so far, and we're getting close to the cutoff. So I'll try to go fast, and then we have time later. So the first one was more adult. Could you give us an example of a web app or a product in general that used GK, the Kubernetes engine, as an example? As I was saying, well, from personal experience, the company I used to work with here in London, it is called odds checker. So it is in the gambling industry. It has actually all based around GK. Our main workload was GKE, so it was doing data extraction, it was doing web service, and acting as a backend. And we've been in production for 3 years plus with that, I think. A suggestion that also, if you want to find out more, is go on meetups if you have the time, or watch some videos. I know that in London there is Kubernetes London, and actually about a dozen of them. And since now they're mostly virtual, you can go on Meetup and sign up and find the link. And more often than not, you'll have some talks which are actual case study of companies or engineers that go and say, hey, that's how we solve something with Kubernetes. So this is the problem we were having with Kubernetes while trying to do something. And that's always fun, even if you don't get freebies anymore, but we'll get there. Second one, please tell us about Antos. Anyone more expert than me on that want to?
Okay, so I guess that we can skip Antos for now, for the simple fact, one, we're close to the cutoff and it will take a lot of time, but probably that could come out in your journey through Pluralsight. If, let's say, in a couple of weeks, you won't find anything in Pluralsight and you want to discuss it, we will be glad to take the question, but just a bit further in the path, because probably you may need to know more about the other products before you can understand fully Antos, which is a complex topic. And then we can present the content in a meaningful way for also the other attendees that are interested in it.
Yeah, I sent a link in the chat about an overview, but yeah, it's a suite of tools rather than a single service. Then Bhavesh asked how to build a low-cost solution for IoT that scales as per requirement. If you can give us a bit more info in the chat, maybe later we can talk to understand, because this is very generic. But in general, IoT solution, as in any other, I would say, as per other HA service, you want the consideration. You want to consider what are the bottlenecks, where is the state, what is the single point of failure, what is that you want to make sure that is available all the time. So it's something that you should tailor to the requirement. Maybe we can talk about it, or maybe even in the Slack channel. One about Quick Lab that I've seen answered already. Important G-Cloud command for ASE.
Well, so we cannot give you an extensive list of it because also the exam like evolves. So most of the times the commands that you're going to use are going to be some of the subcommands of G-Cloud, kubectl, gsutil, BigQuery. I guess that for ACE, those are the main one. I don't know if probably some
so.
Those are the main ones. Yeah.
Something that did help me while doing the exam, the architect one particular, is that G-Cloud shall tend to have a certain structure. It's kind of like G-Cloud resource, then you got maybe the sub-resource, the option. If you start looking at that, by the way, CD posted, let me post it again, a very good PDF about it. It will help you reason about the answer, like Goran did in an example. I mean, remembering all of them, it's gonna be harsh. But yeah, do remember that storage use gsutil, BigQuery use BQ, Bigtable use MPT, is it? I never spell it right, but yeah, some specific resource use other CLI that is not G-Cloud.
Yeah, BQ. It should be BQ for BigQuery. Yeah.
Yeah. And then kubectl for Kubernetes once you created the cluster. Is creating an organization node complicated if you created a GCP cloud from an individual account? I need to create folder that I understand isn't possible without a domain organization. So when you create an account, a project, the project by itself, if you don't have an organization set up, it's without any organization. So the hierarchy is organization, then folder, then project. Project, account are part of organization. You cannot create folder or organization inside an account. What you can do, and I'll post a link that I have somewhere, once you create an organization and folder, you can fairly easily migrate an organization account inside the organization and start managing it as part of the hierarchy. What you cannot do is the other way around, go from an organization to an org. Next one, Severi, you wanna take over for a second? Thanks while I find the link.
Yes, so another question, which is, which are the best vCPU, for example, to run a web server, for example, without spending a lot of money, so an optimized web server that is auto-scaled? Again, this will tie in to the first question about the web app on GKE, or also on the IoT, and what we were saying before about profiling your application. Before you even develop or deploy it to the cloud, it will be helpful to know what are the resources that your application needs to correctly run. Now, you may have with a little bit of experience, you may start guessing, and then monitoring your application, you will see if that fits the bill. Then again, depending on the product that you may use, the auto-scaling may be done differently. What I would say that if you don't need a particularly quick response time, or you don't have stringent requirements, the simplest way to run like some web service, not a web server, as you say, which can be a little bit different, but maybe it could fit your bill, would be Cloud Function. In that case, you don't really need to worry too much about the resources and the auto-scaling, because every time you trigger it, that will be taken care for you. Of course, there are some drawbacks to that, because you are, okay, I cannot talk about some of the things that are to come, but it's going to be, it's constantly being improved. At the moment, the main drawbacks that I can see is like a slow cold start. So if you need your cloud function to be very responsive, that may not be the best tool. But otherwise, if you have like not a constant requirement for of your load, and you have some occasional spikes, Cloud Function will be good. Otherwise, you could start thinking of something bigger on App Engine, or even maybe something that was mentioned by Goran with the instance templates, to have an horizontally scaling compute engine array of instances. So if you have more of an example, we could get into the details for you. Otherwise, just think of profile the application, what are my needs, then I see what is the closely matching one. On the ones available, I maybe give some headroom in case of unforeseen circumstances, and then according to the product, you think of the way that that has to auto-scale. Where can one find the default regions?
Oh, and in the meantime, sorry, I also sent. I'm the link person. A link on auto-scaling with single instances. And if you want to take a look, because that's also part of the exam guide, you should know how to auto-scale, how to set up an auto-scaling group. And it's interesting because in the subsection, you will also see the various ways you can scale on CPU, on latency, on metrics that you get from what used to be called Stackdriver, now it's Opsuit. So a lot of options there. Sorry about the extra bit.
Okay, so then following question, where can one find the default region zone where compute instances will be created? Okay, you can specify that. Usually, I guess that by default, the one, okay, so there are some details here. So usually you also have a default one set for your project that should be used, but you can specify otherwise. And it will be created if there are available resources in the region for that specific instance that you want to create. Usually you do have availability. During some spikes, like when everyone was working from home, I've seen some regions be lacking resources, but most of the times you will not realize it. One note is, be careful if you have, for the same project, resources in different regions, because then you're going to pay for the networking between one instance and the other, which is something that you may not foresee, but that can amount to substantial money. How do you calculate how many nodes, containers, pods you need? Same thing. A bit of experience, a bit of experimentation. There is no absolute rule. One thing that I would say is know your load. Start at a certain point, monitor it, and iteratively see how it's going. You may realize that you have too much, you can decrease it, and leave it to auto-scale up if you can. Of course, you have to also be careful that despite the fact that it says auto-scale, then you probably want to put some boundaries on that, because otherwise, probably the amount of resources that Google Cloud Platform can afford is higher than what your wallet can. So you should put some limits on your infinitely auto-scaling up of whatever resource you want to use.
Oh, the quota.
Okay.
The quota part. Yeah,
yes.
That's
okay.
So,
yeah. Go. Tell them about the quota.
Yeah. So speaking about try not to bankrupt yourself, Google Cloud does put a quota system in place to, well, both protect shared resource and protect your wallet. Because if you usually have one VM and then suddenly you try to spin up 100 of maybe GPU VM, the request will probably fail to start with, because when you create a new account, you have certain quota. So if you're planning on that, that's what's important, whatever it is, an enterprise production workload or something, do take a look at the quota, and there is a request system that is very straightforward and fast to use to make sure that you get however many you need. But yeah, it's also there to protect you from starting mistake and bankrupting yourself. So that's one thing to consider if you're planning a Black Friday event. Take a look at those two.
Yeah. Okay, so cloud storage could be used to connect instances within GCP. I mean, is it possible, for example, elaborate some data with a cloud function and store it, the result in a bucket? Yes. So short answer, yes. So you can use cloud storage from anything. Okay. So you could use it either. It even has a UI, so you can drag objects into it, like it will be any other system. You like your Google Drive, you just put objects in it. That will work. You can use it by CLI to upload object. It will work. So since you can use it, of course, from any of your programming language, you can write a cloud function that uploads something into cloud storage. You can have something on App Engine that uploads something else into cloud storage or read from it. So absolutely, you can use it to glue your products together. Even further, there are going to be some products, especially with pipelines of multiple steps, that can interact by default with cloud storage as part of their processes. So Google had thought about that you may want to use that to store part of your computation. So yes, by default, without you having to write anything, they will still save part of your computation in cloud storage or read from cloud storage. About the exam, how much are the questions configured in remembering exactly the command to use, and how much are they instead formulated to have a knowledge of the solution architecture in general and no specific command? Okay, I don't know exactly. So let's assume like this. So there is a big pool of questions. Part of them are going to be about commands. Part of them are going to be about study cases. We cannot tell exactly how lucky you are going to be getting part of the questions from a subset of the pool or the other. Let's say that you are going to have 50-50. It will never be the case, but it's a 50-50. I don't remember all the commands. I don't think anyone in this chat remember all the commands, as they're trying to suggest, try to learn the structure of the commands. You're surely going to remember part of it and try to infer from it the way the commands are structured, so that if something you see does not follow the format, the way that the usual commands you know and you do remember because you've used in QuickLab or your side project are, you can just discard those because they're not going to work. About the use cases, then yes, those you have to understand the different products, understand your scenario, and you will be able to give a response. Okay, how would you approach moving database from one region to another if wrong one was set up when creating DB? Okay, so this question, this is a big question because it depends on what DB you're using, and especially at which point in your project you realize that that was the wrong database. Because one thing is, oh, I just created it, that's wrong, just delete it and go and create it in another region. It becomes a little bit messier if you have started creating a database and, okay, too late. Well, without going and without knowing which database you are using, what you could do, as for any database, you can take up the backup and restore it in the other region. But then again, you have to consider how the DB fits in your whole architecture. Because if you have created it in the wrong region, you have to ask yourself if The rest of your application stack that is fetching and writing data into that database, is that created in the wrong region too? Because if one is in a region and the other is in another region, you have to consider if you are planning to have those cross-region requests, which could mean that you're going to pay a lot of money just to fetch data and write data because they are not in the same region and they're going to be charged extra. Which module needs to cover in week 2 on Pluralsight for Google ICE? I guess that will be found on the slide that we shared last week or this week as well, because they contain the chapters. I guess that it was GCP Core and GCP Foundation were the two main courses to follow this week 1 and week 2. With a free account, is there any risk of spending more than 300 Google give us? If so, how to prevent that? Okay, I don't remember if, so you have to add a billing account.
I know that sometimes that's the thing. Looking at, it's been a while since I set up an account because, well, my free credit has long since gone. If I remember, you can avoid setting up billing straight away when you set up the free one, so you don't get billed and then the resource gets stopped when they. Is any other of the admin?
I don't know, because
anybody remember if that still happened?
When I created my account, it was I guess 5 years or 6 years ago, and you definitely needed to put your debit card or credit card. So I don't know. I will suggest you to put some alert in place, and an alert way earlier than the 300 limit, because sometimes the alert don't come in real time. And depending on the resource, you don't want to find out too late that you are overspending. CD was going to say something, I guess.
Yeah, I think you covered the point which I was about to say. So initially when I started, I put my money 300 into 3 pockets and initiate the alert like 30%, 40%, 50%, 90%, and then don't do anything. So I think alerting is the only way which you can enable while preparing your billing and other setup of your account. Other than that, it will be hard to track the money actually. Thanks, Elio.
Yeah. One more thing as an advanced user that you could do, and I guess you can find resources online, is automatically action those billing alerts. So if you know that your project is the one that is overspending, when you get the alert, you shut down all the resources that you have. So you make an automated action in which you get the alert, you realize that you're close to your spending limit, and since this is not production workload and you're just probably experimenting, if you're on the 300 pounds or dollars credit, then you shut down everything else, and then you go back with calm and you realize what was wrong, because otherwise it could happen during the night, and by the time you wake up, it's going to be too late.
Yeah, I was just reviewing this link about the free tier. So it does mention, and this is usually the most up-to-date, it does mention that you need a credit card to verify that, well, you're you and not creating anything, but unless you explicitly upgrade to a paid cloud billing account, you won't get billed, which is good.
Actually, Google Cloud will not bill you unless you upgrade to. So
and,
yeah, it's true.
Another one that is more subtle. So the various services, they're divided by API, and when you create a new project, a new account, most API are not active, which means that you need to explicitly say, for example, if you want to start playing, I don't know, with a new service, you need to explicitly say, please enable this service. And that's also good because you need to explicitly say what you want, and it limits the things that you can spin up by mistake. So that's another small piece that can help, I think. Not going everywhere and clicking enable on everything. Just keep just the API that you need enable to keep more control, but that's more like advanced, I don't think.
I guess that Goran showed you how to activate these services in his presentation. When you were finding the products that were not enabled yet, click on it, you wait for it, and on the right-hand side, you have sort of a notification system that will tell, okay, now that's ready if you decide to navigate away. Okay, we are a bit long, and I don't seem to see other questions. Does anyone have some very pressing question at the moment? Because we are about to log out otherwise. Great. So once more, thank you, everyone. You will see us again active on Slack, and you can leave the questions for week 3 over there. And with this, I thank everyone that joined us today for this session, either mentoring or asking questions, helping your fellow attendees. And I wish you a great rest of the week that we just started. I guess that doesn't depend on your time zone. We just started the Monday at this point. So thank you, and see you all next week.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Tschüss.
Thank you.